students. I am Sir Glenn, your subject teacher. Welcome to Statistics and Probability. Our lesson for today is all about constructing probability distribution of a discrete random variable. Let us define first what is a probability distribution. A probability distribution of a discrete random variable x is a list of each possible value of x and the corresponding probabilities of the values. It has two requirements. First one, each probability must be between or equal to 0 and 1. That is, probability of x is greater than or equal to 0 but less than or equal to 1. And the second requirement is the sum of all the probabilities is 1. For the first example, a fair coin is tossed twice. Let x be the number of heads that are observed. Construct the probability distribution of x. Okay, so here in our example, we are to construct the probability distribution of x. So ano yung x natin? It is the number of heads that can be observed after we toss a fair coin twice. So, syempre, kailangan muna nating alamin kung ilan yung mga possible outcomes. Okay? Kasi from those possible outcomes, doon natin malalaman kung ano ba yung mga values ng ating random variable. So, for us to obtain our number of possible outcomes or yung number of elements sa sample space S, we raised 2 to the number of things that are involved in our experiment. So, doon sa ating random experiment na tossing a fair coin twice, dalawang beses ko ito toss yung fair coin. So, 2 raised to 2. Bakit 2 yung exponent? Kasi twice ko ito toss yung coin. So, syempre, kapag ito toss yung coin 3 times, 3 yung magiging exponent niya. Kapag 5 times, 5 yung magiging exponent niya. So, that will be 2 times 2 or 4. So, therefore, ano yung mga possible outcomes or yung magiging elements ng ating sample space S? So, kapag nag-toss tayo ng coins, ng isang coin dalawang beses, pwedeng dalawang tails, pwedeng dalawang heads, pwedeng isang tail, nauna yung isang tail followed by isang head, and then pwedeng nauna si head at followed by isang tail. So you can see, apat ho yung possible outcome ng ating random experiment na pag-toss ng isang coin ng dalawang beses. From there, we can now fill in this table. So ano yung mga possible outcomes natin? We just write it. Dalawang t followed by dalawang h, followed by th, and then followed by ht. So, ano yung values ng ating random variable daw? Yun yung bilang ng, balikan natin yung given, bilang ng heads, number of heads that are observed. So, we just count the number of heads here. So, doon sa una, since walang heads ho, so we write 0. Dito sa pangalawa, dalawa yung heads, kaya we write 2. Dito din isa, dito ay isa din. So, ang values ho ng ating random variable x ay 0, 1, and 2. So after we construct this table, after we identify the possible values of our random variable from our possible outcomes, we now construct our probability distribution or yung table na to. So yung una ay yung mga values ni random variable x at yung pangalawa ay yung probability distribution. Since yun ang kinukuha natin, yung probability distribution or yung probabilities ng ating mga random variables. So, ano yung mga values ni x? So, we have 0, 1, and 2. So, papaano kunin yung mga probabilities nilang lahat? So, ang probability ni, let's just recall, the probability of event A is equivalent to the number of elements in event A all over the number of elements in the sample space. So here, para malaman kung ilan yung number of elements na ang a-appear ay 0 na heads, syempre we just refer to our table above. So ilang beses nag-appear si 0? Isang beses. So the numerator here, the numerator is 1. And then alam natin yung na number of elements ni S ay 4, kaya ang ating probability that 0 heads will appear is 1 all over 4, or this is equivalent to 0.25. Pangalawa, probability that 1 head will appear. So, doon sa table natin, ilang beses nag-appear? Si 1, dalawang beses, so we write there 2. And then alam natin na si number of elements in the sample space is 4. So 2 all over 4 is equivalent to 1/2, and 1/2 is equivalent to 0.50. And then lastly, the probability that 2 heads will occur. So titingnan natin kung ilang beses nag-appear si 2 sa table na to. So isang beses lang siya nag-appear. So we write in the numerator 1, and then sa denominator ay 4. So 1 all over 4, or equivalent to 0.25. So if we try to observe all of the probabilities, nakita natin na each probability is between 0 and 1. So it satisfied the first condition. Satisfied yung first na condition natin. Yung pangalawang condition naman, dapat ang mga probabilities kapag in-add natin sila, ang sagot ho ay 1. So itry nga natin i-add. This will be 0.25 plus 0.50 plus 0.25. If we add that, ang magiging result ay 1. So the second condition is satisfied. So valid ho yung probability distribution na nakuha natin. And aside from that, ang next na gagawin ay ang pag-construct ho ng histogram. Kasi another way to represent our probability distribution ay through a histogram. So papaano gumawa ng histogram? Gumawa lang ho tayo ng parang Cartesian plane pero nasa positive quadrant. So yung line na to, dito natin ilalagay yung ating yung probabilities natin, probabilities. And then yung part na to, dyan ilalagay yung mga values ni random variable. So ano yung mga values ng ating random variable? Just write it 0, 1, and 2. At ano yung mga values ng ating probability? We have 0.25. This will be 0.5, and this will be 0.75. So kay 0, ang nag-appear ay 0.25. Kay 1, ang probability niya ay 0.5, at yung 2 ay 0.25 ulit. So we just shade our bars, and then that's it. That is our histogram for our probability distribution for our first example. So take note, in constructing our histogram, hindi dapat natin pagtabi-tabihin yung mga bars. Okay? Hindi natin dapat gawing ganito yung kay 0, and then ganito yung kay 1, at ganito yung kay 2. Kasi ito ho ay hindi na siya histogram, that is already a bar graph. So ang histogram ho, hindi dapat pinagtatabi or pinagdidikit yung mga bars. Understood? For the second example, an institution have 5 laptops and they discovered that 3 of these are non-defective and 2 are defective. Suppose they are to choose 3 out of 5 laptops. Let Y be the number of non-defective laptops. Construct the probability distribution of Y. In the second example, an institution have 5 laptops and they discover that 3 of these are non-defective and 2 are defective. Suppose they are to choose 3 out of 5 laptops. We let Y be the number of non-defective laptops. Construct the probability distribution of Y. So our random experiment is choosing 3 out of 5 laptops. So ang gagamitin ko natin na formula para mahanap yung number of possible outcomes or yung number of elements in sample space ay yung combination na formula. Ano yung combination formula natin? We have N, C, R, So R objects being chosen out of n objects. So for us to obtain the number of possible outcomes, we use this formula. So in our example, n is 5, r is 3. So ang formula natin ay NCR. So n factorial all over. We have r factorial times n minus r factorial. So ano yung factorial? Ang kanyang formula ay n factorial is equal to, ang kanyang formula ay n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 hanggang ang ma-reach niya ay 1. So example of that, we have 5 factorial is 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So, substituting 5 kay n and then 3 kay r, this will be 5c3 is equivalent to 5 factorial all over 3 factorial times 5 minus 3 is 2 factorial. So, 5 factorial is 5 times 4 times 3 factorial. Bakit nag-stop ako kay 3? Kasi may nakita ako na 3 sa baba. Kapag may 3 factorial sa baba at may 3 factorial sa taas, magkapareho silang dalawa. And then multiplication naman yung operation, we can immediately cancel both. Okay, so this will be 5. Ang naiwan na lang sa taas ay 5 but 4. So 5 times 4 is 20. And then 2 times 1 is 2. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So therefore, number of possible outcomes ni random experiment ay 10. So ano yung mga possible outcomes na yan? So mag-let muna tayo. Ano yung sinabi doon? Sa 5 laptops, dalawa yung defective, 3 yung non-defective. So yung 3, we have n sub 1, n sub 2, and n sub 3. At yung defective na dalawa ay d sub 1 at d sub 2. Ang mga possible outcomes ay, so we have, sabi na natin yung unang result, unang magiging outcome natin ay silang 3 ay magkakasama. Then followed by n sub 1, n sub 2, d sub 1. n sub 1, n sub 2, d sub 2. And n sub 2, n sub 3, d sub 1. And then n sub 2, n sub 3, d sub 2. So ang next dyan, we have n sub 1, n sub 3, d sub 1. n sub 1, n sub 3, d sub 2. n sub 1, d sub 1, d sub 2. n sub 2, d sub 1, d sub 2. And n sub 3, d sub 1, d sub 2. Kung bibilangin ho natin kung ilan yung mga nakuha nating possible outcomes doon sa ating random experiment na choosing 3 out of 5 laptops, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So, nakuha natin yung 10 possible outcomes. Ang next na gagawin dyan, isusulat natin yung mga outcomes na iyan dito sa ating table. So, ano yung mga possible outcomes na nakuha natin? We have n sub 1, n sub 2, n sub 3, n sub 1, n sub 2, d sub 1, n sub 1, n sub 2, d sub 2, n sub 1, n sub 3, d sub 1, n sub 1, n sub 3, d sub 2, n sub 2, n sub 3, d sub 1, n sub 2, n sub 3, d sub 2, n sub 1, d sub 1, d sub 2, n sub 2, d sub 1, d sub 2, and n sub 3, d sub 1, and d sub 2. So, ilan yan? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So, after we write our possible outcomes in the first column, ang next na gagawin, we identify the values of our random variable y. Ano yung random variable natin? number of non-defective laptops. So, ang bibilangin natin ay yung number of N. So, ilang beses nag-appear si N dito? Tatlo. So, we write there 3. Ilan yung N dito? We have 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. And then, ilan si 1? Ilan si N? Iisa. 1, isa din, at isa din. So, ang possible values ng ating random variable x ay we have 1, 2, and 3. At ang number of possible outcomes or yung number of elements in sample space ay 10. So, syempre, sa ating probability distribution, values ni x ay 1, 2, and 3. So, ang probability ni x, so, syempre, probability of A is the same as number of elements ni A at number of elements ni S. So, doon kay choosing 3 out of 5, ilan yung non-defective? Kung ang non-defective ay 1, ilan yung nag-appear doon na 1? So, we have 1, 2, 3. So, doon sa numerator natin, we have 3. And then sa denominator ay 10. We write here, 3 all over 10. Pangalawa, kung dalawa yung non-defective, bilangin natin kung ilang beses nag-appear si 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, we have 6 all over 10, or that is 3 all over 5. And lastly, si 3, ilang beses nag-appear si 3? Syempre, isa lang. Okay? As you can see, 1 all over 10. So, para masabi natin na valid probability distribution ito, dapat masatisfy niya yung dalawang conditions. So, observing the probabilities, yung nakuha nating probability ay in between 0 and 1. As you can see, 3 all over 10 is 0.3, and 0.3 is between 0 and 1. 3 all over 5 is 0.6. 0.6 is still in between 0 and 1. And then see 1 all over 10, in decimal form, that is 0.1. It is still in between 0 and 1. So it satisfied the first condition. So yung pangalawang condition, dapat ang sum nilang lahat ay 1. This will be 0.3, this will be 0.6, and then this will be 0.1. So, adding all 3 probabilities, ang result ay 1. So, nasatisfy din yung pangalawang condition. Therefore, ang ating nakuha na probability distribution ay isang valid na probability distribution. Ang next na step ay paggawa ng ating histogram. This will be, sabihin na natin ito ay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and 0.6. And then, lagdagan lang natin ng isa, 0.7. And then, yung mga values sa ating y-axis, ay x-axis I mean, this will be 1, 2, and 3. So, if x is 1, our probability is 3 all over 10 or 0.3. So, nasaan si 0.3? Nandoon. If x is 2, y is 6 all over 10 or 0.6. Nandoon siya. At kapag si x ay 3, 1 all over 10 or 0.1. After that, we just shade each bar. And that's it. This is our histogram. So this is how we obtain our probability distribution. So una, kailangan muna nating hanapin yung possible outcomes. And then construct our table, this table, para mas madaling hanapan ng probability yung mga values ng ating random variable. Pangalawa, we construct our probability distribution table and we check if it satisfied the two conditions for us to say that our probability distribution is a valid probability distribution. And lastly, we construct our histogram for our probability distribution. Understood? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more math videos.